Hi everyone, welcome back to I Create For You. I've got another ghost story out of this book called Haunted Pets, True Ghost Stories by Alan Zulo. Okay, the story we have today is called The Spirit of Morgan's Woods. After the story, I'm going to try to attempt an illustration of the ghost. One summer afternoon, with the sun slipping behind a ridge of the nearby Smoky Mountains, Wade Hampton and his brother Scott went horseback riding in the area's spookiest forest, Morgan's Woods. For generations, the forest had been the site of eerie events. People claimed to have seen the ghost of a Civil War soldier wandering around the trees, looking for his lost infantry unit. Others reported hearing unearthly voices crying out in pain, but no one had seen or heard anything ghostly in years until the Hampton boys arrived. Wade, 14, and Scott, 13, were spending their summer vacation on the cattle and horse ranch of Uncle Jeb and Aunt Fay in eastern Tennessee. The boys were excellent horsemen and rode every chance they got. Wade sat atop a dark brown saddle horse called Popeye, who got his name because his cheeks would puff out when the bit was placed in his mouth. Scott rode a brown spirited saddle horse named Rebel. The boys were talking about the fun they were having on their vacation when Popeye and Rebel unexpectedly started acting up. They both whinnied and stomped their feet. Their heads bobbed up and down. "Something's bothering the horses," said Wade. "Maybe there's a wild hog out there," Scott added. "They can get pretty nasty." The ears of both horses twitched forward, a sure sign that they were frightened. Leaning over his mount's neck, Wade soothingly told Popeye, "Calm down, boy, it's all right." Wade scanned the woods looking for the animal or person that was scaring the horses. Popeye, his eyes getting wider, neighed even louder and pawed at the ground. Beside him, Rebel reared up and backed away while Scott struggled to maintain control. "Hey, Reb, stop it!" Scott commanded. "Whatever is out there sure has the horses spooked," said Wade. "What do you think we should do?" asked his brother. Before Wade could answer, Scott let out a shout. "Look! Through the trees! What's that?" Wade turned to his right and caught a glimpse of a bright white animal about 200 yards away, darting through the trees before it quickly disappeared in the lush forest. "What was that?" he asked. "I don't know. A deer, maybe?" "I've never heard of an all-white deer," said Wade. "Besides, it seemed bigger than a deer. Let's go see if we can find out what it is." The horses didn't want any part of going deeper into the woods. Normally obedient, both horses tried to stand their ground and protested their riders' commands to move forward. "I've never seen Popeye act like this," said Wade. "Rebel is really putting up a struggle, too. That animal definitely bugged them. Let's turn back. Before we do, I want to mark this place so we can come back tomorrow and look for tracks. I want to find out what it was." Wade got off his horse, collected about 6 sticks, and stood them against each other, forming a waist-high teepee off the side of the path they had been following. The next day, the boys finished their chores quickly and then hopped on their horses and headed into Morgan's Woods. After finding his marker, Wade said, "The animal we saw was about 200 yards away from us, off to the right. Let's see if we can find those tracks." The horses didn't protest this time, and a few moments later the boys reached the spot where they had seen the eerie white animal. They hopped off their mounts and studied the ground, looking for clues. They found tracks for deer and raccoons, but nothing else unusual until, "Hey, Wade, look at this!" shouted Scott. In the soft dirt along the banks of a stream, they found the print of a horseshoe. It looks like it was nothing more than a horse heading across the creek, said Wade. It sure was a bright one, Scott added. It seemed to glow in the shade. They forded the stream by hopping from one rock to another until they got to the other side. Here are some more horseshoe prints, said Wade. He followed them for a bit and then said, Whoa, look, Scott, look at this. Scott ambled over and examined the ground. I don't see anything. That's the point. Look at the prints over there, said Wade, pointing to the hoof prints leading from the stream. They're heading straight ahead for about 10 yards. Then they just disappear. If the horse had turned away, we'd have seen the tracks off to the left or the right because the ground is still soft, but there aren't any. Did the horse just vanish into thin air? That doesn't make much sense, said Wade, but I can't come up with a better explanation. The boys went back to the other side of the stream and looked to see where the hoof prints came from. To their surprise, they discovered the prints began about 20 yards from the stream, but none before that. It's like the horse just came out of nowhere, ran across the creek in front of us, and then went to nowhere, said Scott, scratching his head. Well, we know one thing, said Wade. The horse is not wild. It has horseshoes. That means it must belong to somebody. That night at dinner, the brothers told their aunt and uncle about the hoof prints of the strange white horse. I don't know of anyone around these parts who owns a white horse, said Uncle Jeb. Your story sounds pretty unusual to me, but then you were in Morgan's woods. Now, Jeb, said Aunt Fay, don't go and get them all scared up. I'm not, Fay. Besides, they're old enough. I can't help it if people say those woods are haunted. Just because you and I haven't ever seen any ghosts there doesn't mean they don't exist. Turning to the boys, Aunt Fay said, Maybe you should stay away from the woods, especially at night. Wade broke out in a grin. Why, Aunt Fay? You don't believe in ghosts, do you? About a week later, the Hampton brothers had finished their early morning chores and were riding their horses in the woods. Fog covered the valley, fingering through the gaps between the rolling foothills. The boys returned to the stream near where they had spotted the white horse. They planned to build a makeshift fishing hole by damming up the creek with small trees that they were going to chop down. Just as Wade was about to swing his axe at a sycamore tree, the horses, who had been quietly munching on ground cover a few yards away, whinnied with alarm. They began backing up and stomping their feet. Something is out there, said Wade. Better get our horses. But as the boys approached them, the steeds took off in fright. Hey, Popeye, get back here! Rebel, whoa, come back! The horses had fled in the morning mist. What's going on here? Wondered Wade. Wade, look behind you. Wade turned around. Out of the fog galloped a dazzling white stallion. He held his long head high like a king, and his flowing mane fluttered majestically in the breeze. His large nostrils flared wide. A bold black mark streaked down his neck and stopped midway at his muscular chest. Look out! Shouted Wade. He's heading right for us. Both boys began to scramble when Scott tripped and fell and sprawled face first onto the ground. Wade turned around and, fearing that his brother would be trampled, rushed back to help. He reached Scott with only enough time for both of them to roll up into balls, cover their heads, and hope they wouldn't get stomped. They braced themselves against the deadly hoofs, but nothing happened. Wade poked up his head and looked around. Where's the horse? Asked Scott. He's gone. But he was heading right toward us. Where'd he go? The shaken boys got to their feet and looked around. The tracks, shouted Wade. Look at the tracks. They end about 5 feet from where we were. They don't veer off or anything. He just disappeared like that, said Scott, snapping his fingers. This is getting freaky. Come on, let's get out of here. The boys whistled for the horses and eventually found them about a quarter mile away. When the boys returned to the barn, they excitedly recounted their brush with the mysterious white stallion to Wiley Pickett, one of the old ranch hands. He stopped brushing the horse he was grooming, took off his grimy cowboy hat, and rubbed his stubbly chin. Did this horse have a dark black streak running from his throat down to his chest? He sure did, said Wade. Do you know who he is? Sounds like Alabaster to me. Whose horse is he? Asked Scott. Well, he probably belongs to Winfield Morgan. Does Winfield Morgan have anything to do with Morgan's Woods? Wade asked. Wiley nodded. He's the Morgan. But I thought Morgan had some guy who lived back in the 1800s, said Scott. Wiley nodded again. That he was. Wait a second, said Wade. Are you saying that the horse we saw is owned by a guy who lived in the last century? That I am, Wiley replied. You're pulling our legs, Scott claimed. Horses don't live that long. Who says he's alive? Asked Wiley, raising one bushy brown eyebrow. Now you're joshing us for sure, declared Wade. Not true, boys. I'm guessing that what you saw was the ghost of Alabaster, Winfield Morgan's pride and joy. The boys looked at each other and grinned. They were convinced that Wiley was putting them on, but they figured it wouldn't hurt to listen to the old man spin a yarn about a ghostly steed. Wiley leaned on a stable door, pulled out a hand-carved toothpick, and began picking his teeth. Let me tell you about Winfield Morgan. He was such a pretty rich man back in the 1800s. He owned much of the land around here and raised cattle and horses. He watched over his huge spread while riding on his prized steed, a magnificent white horse called Alabaster, named after a kind of white rock that used to make statues and vases. Morgan and Alabaster were a familiar sight as they made their way across this land. Although there were plenty of pasture, they liked to spend time deep in the woods where Morgan could think. Even though he had lots of cattle, horses, acres, and money, the thing Morgan cherished the most were the trees in his forest. Beech, elm, hickory, oak, and sycamore, acre after acre. Thousands of them were permitted to grow as wild woodland because that was the way he wanted it. Morgan loved those trees so much that he ordered all his workers never to cut down a single one without his permission. He would examine the trees from atop about Alabaster, marking those that he would allow to be cut down. To him, each tree was an individual with its own personality. He considered them living, breathing creatures needing his care and protection. If someone dared try to chop down a tree, even for firewood, he and Alabaster would charge at the person and run him off the land. The boys looked at each other in amazement. Wiley, said Scott, we were just about to cut down a tree when that horse came out of nowhere. See, there you are. Alabaster felt a kinship with the forest. In fact, he sometimes acted jittery in the open spaces. But in the woods, he seemed to shine. His white coat lit up the entire forest. The horse looked like it was glowing, Scott exclaimed. I believe it, said Wiley, moving the toothpick to the corner of his mouth. Now, where was I? Oh, yes, when the Civil War was headed toward a climax in 1864, life turned sour for Morgan. The Union troops were sweeping through the countryside, destroying everything in sight to break the spirit as well as the back of the Confederates. The Yankees stole most everything they could take from farmers and burned the rest. When the Blue Coats arrived at Morgan's huge ranch, he greeted them from his front porch, hoping if he acted nice, they'd leave him alone. Not a chance. They were convinced he had stashed a fortune in gold, and they demanded to know where he hid it. He denied that he had any and stubbornly refused to talk further about it. So they threatened to burn down his barn if he didn't tell them where the gold was buried. When he remained silent, they torched the barn. As the barn burned, the soldiers set out on their own and headed into the woods, along the paths that Morgan and Alabaster had traveled on. They stuck their bayonets into the ground at spots where they thought the gold might be hidden, but they didn't find any at first. The soldiers went deeper and deeper into the woods when suddenly they heard the whinny of a horse. They followed the sound until it led them to a clearing in a remote part of the forest. There they found the beautiful white horse, Alabaster, tied to a tree. Morgan had left him there with a good supply of water and hay, hoping to keep him from the Yankees. But Alabaster, hearing the soldiers' horses in the distance, had innocently called out to them. His neighing had given away his hiding place. The Yankees then snooped around, and lo and behold, they found Morgan's gold, hidden under a bale of hay. The soldiers grabbed the gold and then led Alabaster back to the ranch. Morgan pleaded with the soldiers. They keep the gold, he said, but please let him keep Alabaster. He loved that horse as much as he did the trees, but Alabaster was too fine a horse for the soldiers to give up. The last Morgan saw of Alabaster, he was whinnying and quivering under a rider in a blue uniform. Alabaster turned one last time and looked wide-eyed and sad at Morgan. The poor horse knew he had mistakenly betrayed himself and his master. Morgan was so upset that he pulled out a pistol he had hidden under a floorboard on the porch and shot the rider. The soldiers then returned fire and killed Morgan. "What happened to Alabaster?" asked Scott. "They say he died of a broken heart a short time after Morgan's death. His spirit returned to the woods, protecting the trees and searching for his master." The brothers sat quietly for a moment before Wade said, "That was a great tale, Wiley." "That's no tale, son. That's the truth." "Have you ever seen Alabaster's ghost?" asked Scott. "Nope, I haven't heard of anyone seeing him since I was knee-high to a piglet, until you saw him today." During the last month of their vacation, the boys went out to Morgan's Wood 6 more times, but they never saw the strange white horse. 2 days before the end of their vacation, Wade went for a ride alone with Popeye. He told his aunt he was heading for a nearby lake, but on the way there he spotted a gliding eagle and followed it until it came to rest atop a tree in Morgan's woods. Suddenly, Popeye let out a startled neigh. Wade heard the unmistakable sound of an angry rattlesnake. He looked down and saw that his horse had been bitten in the front right leg by the deadly reptile. Popeye then reared up so high and fast that Wade flipped backward over the horse's rump, and the boy crashed into a large rock, shoulder first. The moment he landed hard on the ground, Wade heard a sickening snap in his left leg and felt a jabbing pain. He knew he was badly injured. He later learned that he had broken not only his leg, but also his collarbone and several ribs. The pain grew so intense that he passed out. The moment when Wade regained consciousness, he tried to sit up, but his injuries hurt too much. Luckily, the snake had slithered away. Wade breathed with difficulty and could utter only a weak moan because of his broken ribs. "I hurt so much," Wade thought. "I can't walk. I can't shout. No one knows I'm out here. I told Aunt Fay I was going to ride around the lake. They won't think to look here in the woods. Maybe Popeye headed back to the barn. That's what horses usually do when they don't have a rider. At least then people will know something has happened to me, and they'll start a search. But it might take forever before they think to look for me in Morgan's woods. Still, it's my only hope." Just then he heard a snort. "That sounds like a horse. Is it Popeye or a searcher?" Weakly, Wade tried again to sit up. Despite the pain in his shoulder and ribs, he managed to peek over the rock. Oh no, it's Popeye and he's hurt. Several yards away, his horse lay on his side, breathing heavily. His right front leg was swollen and shaky. Wade slumped back down. It'll be nightfall before they realize I'm missing. They won't be able to start a search until morning. This pain, it's so bad. He began to feel dizzy and was slowly losing consciousness again, when suddenly he heard the snorting and neighing of a horse. He lifted his head just enough to see that it wasn't Popeye. It was the mysterious white horse rearing up on its hind legs and pawing the air. Alabaster, said the dazed boy. Then he passed out again. Wiley, over here, shouted Uncle Jeb, as he pulled on the reins of his horse. It's Popeye. He's hurt. Wade must be around here somewhere. Wade? Wade, where are you? Wade, trying to clear his foggy head, feebly yelled, Over here, behind the rock. Uncle Jeb jumped off his horse and ran over to the injured boy. Wade, are you all right? Uncle Jeb, I'm glad to see you. I think I broke my leg. My ribs hurt, too. What happened? A rattlesnake bit Popeye and he threw me. I landed on a rock. Is Popeye dead? No, but he's in bad shape. Turning to Wiley, Jeb barked, Get back to the ranch. Call the medics and get them over here with a stretcher. We got a badly injured boy. Then call Doc Sanders at the animal hospital. Tell him we need him to treat a horse with a snake bite. And hurry. Uncle Jeb, Wade said groggily, is it morning? No, it's about 5 p.m. Why? How did you find me so fast? No one knew I was out here. With Popeye laid up, I figured no one would know I was in trouble. We didn't know. It's the darndest thing. About a half hour ago, Wiley and I were on our horses, checking the herd, when this white stallion came galloping out of Morgan's woods and headed straight toward us. Spooked the living daylights out of the cows and the horses. We were pretty stunned, too, because we had never seen him before. Well, he kept rearing up and snorting, whinnying to beat the band. He ran from one end of the fence to the other. We just stood there and watched, but then he seemed to get angry. He began kicking at the fence and knocked a section down. That got my dander up. So Wiley and I hopped on our horses and took off after him. He led us into Morgan's woods. The weirdest thing was that he wasn't that far ahead of us. Yet at least 3 times he seemed to disappear and then reappear. The last time we saw him was right near where Popeye is lying. That's when I discovered you. Did the horse have a black mark running down his chest? I believe he did. That's the horse Scott and I saw. That was Alabaster, Uncle Jeb. I just got saved by the ghost of a white stallion. That's a pretty interesting story. A pretty long one, too. It's kind of believable. I mean, if you think about it. That, the woods were a part of that horse's life, and it was his only connection to his master at the time. Also, something that they both loved and liked to visit, and that he would be there guarding the trees and helping that boy out. So I'm going to try to do a horse picture. Well, here I am unprepared. I need to sharpen this a little bit. Yeah, okay. And let's see if I can draw a stallion. Hopefully I can. That wasn't too bad. I kind of like this little book. I got this at I think I got this at a thrift store, if I'm not mistaken. And I saw it and I thought, well, that'd be something different to put in every now and then instead of just having our regular Berks County stories. So I'm kind of glad I picked it up. I didn't really look at it too much in the store, so I'm kind of glad I got it. Now I'm going to try to draw this the best that I can. May not look too realistic, but I'll give it a go. Okay. Used to love drawing horses when I was a kid. That was one of my go-to things I always had. I even took lessons when I was a kid. I mean, I didn't live anywhere that I could, own a horse, but I was somewhat infatuated with them growing up. This is the horse's mane blowing around here. I should have did this last, but okay. Let's see here, his nose. Mouth there for a little bit. And then we'll have him like right about here. I'll start the body. Yep, there's my 5-foot long elbow knocking the sharpener onto the floor. Like I said, for some reason my elbows like to grow a little bit when I'm trying to draw or do anything. And then I get so engrossed in what I'm doing that I don't think to move anything in that corner, and then that's what happens. I actually wanted to be a racehorse jockey when I grew up, but the problem was I grew up. I was no longer the size that is required for a jockey. I was such a short little thing that my parents had a friend who raised racehorses, and she would race them at Penn National Raceway near Harrisburg, and we'd go watch her, and we got to get pictures taken in the winner's circle, because she really did. She had this one trainer. I can't remember his name. It's been so long since. I mean, I might have been like 12 or 13, and I'm kind of up there in age right now, so it's like Mario Benito, I think was his name, and he was a good trainer. I mean, he did a really good job with the horses. I know, this kind of looks funky. I'm trying to make it so that I've never really done a rearing horse where they're standing up. Try to go from here now. See if I can get the front legs up. and out. Yeah, he did an excellent job because she used to have so many trophies, and her horses would always be in the winner's circle, which was pretty cool. I think I may even still have pictures of that, being able to see and stand with the horses. That was another cool thing I liked. She even said to me one time, she said, if you don't grow anymore, maybe I'll get you trained as a jockey and you could help race my horses. And I was like, oh my gosh. And then, wouldn't you know it, I have a growth spurt. And I think I was like 2 inches over the amount. I was so upset because I really wanted to do that. I thought that was an awesome experience. That would have been an awesome experience. I did meet a lot of jockeys and stuff, and they were little short things. They were I think 5 foot was the limit. I don't quite remember, but I think that's what that was it. I mean, once you got past that, well, then you were not considered jockey material. I used to go back where they had the horses, and I used to get jockey. They would give away their goggles that they would race with, because they always had a whole lot of them. And by the time they got done with the race, those goggles were so muddy and caked. I don't even know how they even were able to ride like that and be able to see where they were going. But yeah, that was the good old days. Some things you take for granted when you're a kid, and that may have been one of the things that I did take for granted, is being able to do things and get to know people like jockeys, because not everybody gets that experience. This right here is looking funky for some reason. Let me fix this here. I think I did this wrong. I'm too busy yapping. Gotta quit yapping and paying attention to what I'm drawing here. Then when I was growing up, and when I was still infatuated by horses, and I had been taking horseback riding lessons and everything, I remember my parents were looking to move, and I was like, where are we gonna move? I'm like, oh, I don't know if I want to move, because I really liked where we lived, and so I was kind of not too keen on the idea. This is his mane coming down around his chin there. And I remember we went to this place to look, and I was like all excited because it had a barn, and all I kept thinking was, oh man, I wonder if we're going to be able to get a horse then, and I was getting all excited. And come to find out, we didn't move there, and at the time my mom even looked at an Appaloosa horse, it was a colt at the time, and it was named Blue Dot, because the dots on an Appaloosa horse when they're born are actually blue in color. And so the people who had owned it gave it the name Blue Dots, and it was the cutest thing. But we didn't end up getting it, and I think my mom was looking at it because she thought we might be moving into that place, and then we didn't. So yeah, that was heartbreaking, but I still got to do everything with the other horses at my mom's friend. And now my son lives in Wyoming and he has horses, so that's pretty cool. I can't wait to visit him and see them. I haven't met the horses yet, but I know it will happen. I'm not quite liking this leg, but I might just change this up a little bit. And it looks better like that, I guess. And there's my, I hope you can see it, there's my stallion. My depiction of the stallion with him looking back at the guys like, are you coming? Because the little boy's hurt, come my way, are you coming this way? His hair blowing. And of course I'm not gonna make him color him or anything, but they said he had a black line, so I'm going to make a black line. It would be mostly here, I think. Let me see. If you put his head front, well, yeah, I'll just leave it right there. He had a black line going down his neck. So that is Alabaster, the white stallion ghost horse. Hope you like this. Hope you like this story today. Like I said, I'll be mingling these in between the other stories, the other ghost stories, and drawing the animals that are the ghosts or spirits or whatever you want to call them in the stories themselves. Please hit the like button, subscribe, share, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Thanks for coming along. Bye-bye.